يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون.
Tawheed must be the firm foundation to build on, and any other foundation is a foundation on the edge of a crumbling cliff, tumbling down to the pit bottom. Yes, Islam calls for liberated Muslim lands, and it has a social system, an economic and justice system. Had the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam founded his nation on various other ideologies or under any other slogans, and raised his Sahaba on them and used them to gain followers, it may have most likely spared him from many of the hardships and grief and torture he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Sahaba endured. If the deluded today were living back then, they would have told the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you should use a different route to establish your nation and raise your Sahaba on, so you can spare yourself and your Sahaba the torture. Then once you ascend to leadership and establish a stronghold, you can change it to Tawheed. But the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam made it clear, beyond clarity, that this call was founded purely on Tawheed, and the mushrikeen understood that very well, and that's why they said, أَجَعَلَ الْآلِهَةَ إِلَهًا وَاحِدًا. Look at nationalism, for example. It was easy for the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam to unite and gather followings under it. He could have tainted the call of Tawheed with the call to nationalism or liberating occupied Arabic lands. But ma'adallah, would he do that? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yemen in the south was under the rule of the Persians, who ruled it by an Arab appointed agent. And Asham in the north was under Roman rule, who ruled it by an Arab appointed agent. The only non-occupied Arabic lands were Mecca, Medina, Tihama, and Najd, and some other useless dry deserts. Dry deserts and tribal feuding and bloodshed and massacring of one another made it something unworthy for the superpowers to bother to occupy. A man, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the most noble fraction of the most noble tribe, whose honesty and trustworthiness and decisions were accepted for years before his messagehood, which came to light when everyone accepted his decision as to how to place the black stone. That man, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, could have used that background that he had and that influence that he had to unite the Arab under the banner that they would accept, like nationalism or liberation of occupied lands, that may have spared him and the Sahaba the torture they endured for those 13 years. Then, after gaining territory and ascending to power and gaining strength, he can say, now let's give you the raw deal. Our call is really to La ilaha illallah. And ma'adallah, would he do something like that, sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Like, I'll give you another example. The Messenger could have easily united them under something they would accept, like a social justice reform. Better financial living for the majority who were poor, just like we heard in the Arabic Spring. There was a few wealthy people lavishly living, and those few rich were oppressively dealing in usury, multiplying it over and over on the majority who were poor. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تأكلوا الربا أضعافا مضاعفة. We're going to take the wealth from the small amount of wealthy people and spread it among the large amount of the poor. The poor would have followed him. He would have amassed a massive following. But even though Islam calls for the rights of the poor and has the most justice economic system, the slogan remained, قُولُوا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ تُفْلِحُوا. Another example. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent at a time when manners and ethics were at their lowest. He could have united people or gathered them under the banner of an ethical or moral reform. Killing, gambling, prostitution, oppression was at its peak. Gatherings for alcohol was in the morning and evenings and in between. And it was something to bolster about. In Sahih Bukhari, Aisha radiallahu anha described a glimpse of some of the sickest types of relationships in Jahiliyyah. She mentioned the prostitutes who would post flags at their doors as a sign, and whoever wished would enter upon them. And she mentioned another type, which was a group of less than 10 men who would assemble and enter upon a woman, and if she got pregnant and gave birth, she named any one of those 10 that she liked to be the father. Another type was when a man would tell his wife, after she became clean from her period, go have sexual intercourse with another man. A call for reforming and purifying them from that filthy lifestyle would have gained him ground and probably spared him grief. Isn't Islam against drinking and gambling and fornicating and prostitution and oppression? Of course. Moral and ethical reform, according to the Quran and Sunnah, is essential. But the slogan remained, La ilaha illallah. As difficult as it was, Allah guided His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be persistent in maintaining his call and slogan purely and clearly on Tawheed. Some of those aspects are what Islam calls for. Islam came to reform the economic system, the social and moral ethics, to liberate occupied lands. But all that is under La ilaha illallah. And if that was matters encompassed under La ilaha illallah, yet the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam kept his da'wah and slogan clear and pure on La ilaha illallah, then imagine those who use shirk in an attempt to ascend to power, then they allege they'll change it. Like the shirk of democracy or kufr in violating wala and bara or interfaith or other slogans, or under the pretext, for example, of maslahah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave all the messengers a specific way to call for this da'wah. And it was a way chosen by Al-Alim Al-Hakim, even if it endured more hardships and difficulties. Because an unpaved path that gets you to your goal is better than a paved path that takes one to Jahannam wal-'iyadhu billah. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن قَبْلِكَ مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاعْبُدُونِ يُنَزِّلُ الْمَلَائِكَةَ بِالرُّوحِ مِنْ أَمْرِهِ عَلَى مَن يَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ أَنْ أَنذِرُوا أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاتَّقُونِ. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam repeated it over and over. La ilaha illallah. قولوا لا إله إلا الله.
Diamonds and pearls and palaces awaiting the man of Tawheed. Virgins and wine, never-ending time, and gardens with rivers beneath.